I'm Joy Reyes from the London School of Economics Grantham Research Institute on Climate Change and the Environment. I'm also with the Loss and Damage Collaboration, and I'm here at COP30 to follow discussions on loss and damage, as well as climate litigation conversations. The Loss and Damage Collaboration is a group of practitioners, negotiators, activists, artists who all work on loss and damage, where we're not a physical space, but we are an online space, and we have both Global North and Global South individuals and organizations working on the broader loss and damage conversations. I do have experience of loss and damage. I am from the Philippines, and in 2020, Typhoon Ulysses, or international name Vamco, ravaged the country. This was at the height of the pandemic. And I remember having to help my parents carry furniture up the flight of stairs just because water was creeping into the house, and water was up until waist height. And this is the story of so many Filipinos, and even those who just in the Global South who are facing the impacts of a warming climate on the daily. So climate litigation came about because of the fact that there are a lot of need to hold corporations, polluters accountable for their climate harms. We know that the negotiations are taking place, and many people say that this is not sufficient in and of itself to help those who are in need. And so climate litigation has kind of become another way by which individuals and communities can hold corporations, countries, polluters accountable for their climate harms. And currently, this is really a discussion of storytelling, of narratives, of bringing to the fore the lives, the stories, the experiences of those who have severely been impacted by warming climate. There are so many climate litigation cases currently. Our organization, the Grantham Research Institute, releases what is now called the Global Trends Report. So it's a snapshot of all climate litigation all over the planet in partnership with Colombia Sabin Center for Climate Change. And there are around 3,000 cases since we began tracking them. And in the last year alone, there are around 250 cases from 60 countries. And a large chunk of these cases come from the Global South. One of the most interesting, cases is this case of Luciano Yuya versus RWE. Luciano Yuya is a Peruvian farmer from the Andes who filed a case against German utility company RWE in order for RWE to pay its proportionate share in order to deal with the risk of glacial outburst flood in the Peruvian Andes. While the case was dismissed because it did not reach the legal threshold for risk, the court did say that in principle, corporations can be held liable for their climate harms, regardless of whether you're in Peru or in other places in the world. There is also the International Court of Justice advisory opinion, which really said that states have a legal obligation to address climate impacts and also to make sure that developing countries are able to adapt to the impacts of climate change. It seems that litigation will be, hopefully that is the goal actually, that it becomes part of the negotiations. This is not to say that litigation is the end-all and be-all of climate justice conversations, but rather that litigation can play an important role as well. And so discussions on achieving climate justice is not something that can only be in the convention halls, in the streets, or even in legislation rooms, but also as well as in the courtrooms. Luciano Liuya and his community in Huaraz would have been able to get a proportional share of RWE's greenhouse gas emissions. This is something that can now be done via this study or this branch of science called attribution science that is used in climate litigation. And if the case were to have been successful, he would have been able to help his community be reimbursed for the costs that are used to adapt to future climate impacts. Furthermore, this is important because it creates a public narrative. It changes and shifts public's perception. And really, it creates pressure on politicians as well as negotiators that this is something that is happening somewhere else, and this could be brought into the negotiation halls. So these cases originate mostly in the global north. A huge chunk of the case is still within the US. However, we're seeing that more cases are also being filed in the global south. Most of the cases are filed by global south plaintiffs as against global north defendants. We have, for instance, again, the case of Luciano Yuya versus RWE. We have the case of Asmania versus Holcim, which is a group of islanders from Pari, Indonesia, who are filing a case against cement company Holcim. Very recently, we have two cases as well. The Odette survivors, a Philippine case of Typhoon Rise survivors against Shell, as well as Pakistan flood survivors from the 2022 floods against RWE and Heidelberg. So these are things that are happening currently. We hope to see more cases within Global South, but really this is showing that this is a conversation on climate justice, that those who have benefited the most from climate change are those who should be held accountable to be paying for their impacts. We think that litigation could lead into legislation. This has already seen not just legislation, but also policies. In South Korea, for instance, youth from South Korea filed a case against their government because they said that their policies are unconstitutional in order to meet their reduction targets. And because of that, the government of South Korea has really increased their ambition in their nationally determined contribution. So perhaps not so much in legislation, but definitely in their nationally determined contributions or in other policies, but maybe soon as well as in their legislation. Litigation could be a good thing because it empowers individuals and communities who might not have access to government halls or even the UNFCCC negotiation process. Again, this is a lacuna of what can be used. It is not the end-all and be-all of climate justice. However, it is one way by which individuals from one global south country can go to the front, raise their voice, amplify their needs, and go against a corporation or a country that has impacted their community and their countries.